Board, so we can get started whenever you're ready.
Welcome to Markers and Milestones, where we explore educational opportunities for young men and women beyond traditional college, all from a Christ-centered perspective. I'm Lee Bortons, and I'm here with my co-host Amanda Kleist and our producer Julie Melendez. Today is May 8th, 2023, and we're joined by our good friend Meghan Griffin, who is provost at Southeastern University. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be with you.
So Meghan, why don't you tell people what a provost is? What is it you do?
That's funny. A lot of people, if I introduce myself, they're like, yeah, okay, I have no idea what that is. So I think the better title would be like a vice president of academic affairs at an institution. You typically would work right under the president, and then all of the institution's academic functions fall to the provost. And that means things like compliance and accreditation, but also developing programs, leading faculty, making sure that we stick to the institutional mission in all of our classes, ensuring students have a high quality academic experience. All of those things fall within my purview. And because it's SEU, that also means a lot of partnerships and extension site work and growth.
Okay, so that's kind of leading towards what I really wanted to talk about tonight. And then usually I ask the logistical questions, then Amanda makes sure we ask some good philosophical and some Christian questions for our families to consider. So Meghan, before we go on, again, logistics, tell us about your family and where you live.
Great. I'm in Lakeland, Florida. I have 3 kids. They're 8, 10, and 12. And the 8-year-old had to go swimming right now, which is why we're out here. It's Florida, so it's warm all the time, including evenings in May. So that's what we do. I've lived in Florida most of my life. A lot of our family's here. And I've worked at a few different institutions here. My husband, Lee, and I have been married for 19 years, which is still hard for me to believe. And the most interesting thing probably is 7 houses down on our street are my parents, and they're a big part of our everyday life. And my dad actually just started working at SEU with us. So it's whenever you see me, it's usually a group of 7 people all kind of rumbling around together.
That's really wonderful. So, so I alluded to why we wanted you on. You are the key reason that CC Plus has done just so very well in the sense of supporting the parents and the hiring of the professors and making sure the accreditation goes well. So do you mind first telling our audience, what do I mean by CC Plus?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you what it is. I can also tell you why it matters so much to me. So let me start with what it is. CC Plus is essentially a way for students who are in Challenge 2, 3, and 4 to begin earning college credit if they want that. That is right alongside, like it keeps them focused on the Challenge curriculum, which we believe is the highest and best thing they can do for high school, and start to earn credit while sticking with that program. And the reason it works that way is because we find that the Challenge curriculum is already more than enough to meet college level learning outcomes. And so all we simply do is come alongside and assess the work that students are doing anyway and say, this is credit bearing. And so we get it on a transcript for students. They can choose to do 1 class. They can choose to do a number of classes. I think the maximum a person could come out with, if they wanted to do everything, which is not something we, think is necessary. You could do up to a whole freshman year of college through the CC Plus program. And then there's more. I mean, if people wanted to continue on in degree programs, they absolutely could. That's part of CC Plus. The other interesting thing about CC Plus is it's not just for students who are currently enrolled as Challenge 2, 3, and 4 students. If you're a parent who's leading one of those strands or a director of one of them, you too could be earning credit for the same kinds of learning experiences. So that's a little bit about the CC Plus program.
Yeah, so I'll just fill in a couple of things I think are important. We have students as young as our challenge 2, which is around 15, 16 years old. But the majority of our students would take courses in challenge 3 and challenge 4. And in general, like you said, there's a lot of offerings, but we recommend 1 or maybe 2 CC Plus courses a semester, because we don't want to see you neglecting the rest of your challenge curriculum. And, you know, as soon as they get that accreditation and the parents are paying a little bit extra, it's natural to want to pay more attention to that. And so you've just been really gracious and helping us to hire staff and to outline what we're already doing, excuse me, in such a way that students can be good at completing their little bit extra work to get done with CC Plus, as well as the other strands that they're operating in. So thanks for the help there. Okay, so why is it important? You wanted to say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share. I was part of like higher ed before I was a part of CC. So like I was used to spending a lot of time around professors and those types of folks. But I'll tell you, I had never experienced like a real integration of academics and life until I attended a parent practicum one summer. And, you know, it was while I was with all of these CC moms, and they were, you know, some of you listening, I know Lynn Dotto out in Florida, she's teaching, and we're looking at Chesterton quotes up on the screen and singing in Latin, and just, it was this beautiful time. But at the same time, everyone's grabbing a diaper, tossing Cheetos this way. It was just like this totally different experience. And what I remember thinking, like, these are my people. They're as smart as any professor I've ever worked with in my life. And they get the whole rest of the picture, which is everything we care about the most, everything we're doing with our kids. So just even in that initial experience, I could see the depth and the richness of what CC was, just with being around people and the kinds of things that become, you know, lunchtime conversation. It was just different than anywhere else. And the reason it matters so much to me is because I would first say, like, there's so much discussion around early college credit. There's so much discussion around dual enrollment and concurrent credit. And just fundamentally and philosophically, I am not a fan of rushing anything early. What I am a fan of is credit should follow where learning happens well. So for us, the CC Plus program is we're showing up to offer the credit opportunity because it was happening anyway. Like, we don't want to change anything about it. It's because college level learning is already happening, not to rush the kids. I think learning should always be at the pace of human understanding and no faster. So I worry about that sometimes, because I know there's a lot of folks who want to try to hurry up and do as much as you can, as early as you can. And that's just not what we're focused on with CC Plus. And anything that would keep a student in challenge and discourage a parent from feeling like they should, you know, head out to a, you know, accelerated dual enrollment community college thing or something, anything that would keep them engaged through challenges is the idea.
Right. Yeah. And that's another reason we were so happy to work with you, because your interest wasn't in cannibalizing our students.
No.
I know how many college provosts and deans and presidents come to us and say, why don't you have CC kids do our, you know, online course or our dual enrollment course? And we're like, because ours is better, because ours has a person in front of them, because ours is about Christian community. You know, we don't cannibalize our own programs. And you came in and said, you guys are doing an amazing job. You're already doing the work. Why don't we tell the world that you're meeting the standards that are already required? And you just do that verification with each of the students.
Exactly.
So tell us some of the other services that you offer, because it's not just CC Plus, and I appreciate you saying that the parents can be part of that. So
Yeah.
if I talk to us about transferring the credits to SEU and what other programs you have and opportunities once they leave challenge.
Sure. So if someone's doing CC Plus, regardless of where if they choose to go to college, anywhere they go, they would have a transfer from SEU that's portable with them that could transfer into another regionally accredited institution. If they stay with SEU, then all of our programs are open to them. Some are online, and we have, you know, 260 locations across the US and abroad. regional campuses in 34 states. So there's a lot of programs that are only offered face-to-face in those kinds of modalities, but then there's several online. Our main campus is in Lakeland, Florida. And that's where we have like our traditional residential 18 to 22-year-old students all living together. And it's a beautiful place. So all of those opportunities are possibilities for any challenge student with us
So
or
the
with
challenge,
any other.
so the challenge students where Amanda is in California and doesn't want to go to Florida, they have
Sure.
some SEU possibilities. Tell us,
Yep.
so explain how that works.
Okay, so there are 12 SEU campuses in California. For example, one of the larger ones is at, it's in Modesto, and we call it the NorCal campus. Saddleback Church is coming on as an SEU site. There's several others, Thrive in Bayside, California. There's a whole bunch, and they're all different. So each one of those has, and this is, I think, a really important thing to talk through at some point. Each one of those has their own sort of flavor, focus, distinctives, their own kind of sense of the faculty. And I think learning is always local. So they all have their own different mentors that work with students, different faculty that work with students. And so a student who is interested in being somewhere closer to where they live, there's typically an SEU site near them. That's true in a number of other states. And then sometimes those sites will have a smaller number of programs available. So for example, our extension sites have a lot of ministry programs, a lot of business. And then a student might want to do something like criminal justice, and they may be the only one at the site. So they do parts of that program online and then do the rest of their program with their community. One of the things that's pretty interesting is there's a validated research instrument called the Thriving Quotient, and we can administer CCC, Christian colleges and universities administer the Thriving Quotient to students at all kinds of institutions. And what we found is there's actually some measures of student thriving that are higher at a smaller local extension site. And this won't be a surprise to those in the classical conversations community. They're smaller because they have, the thriving quotients are higher when it comes to psychological safety, having a sense of a mentor that's close to you, and a community group that you're a part of. Much of what college has done is leave all those things, go try to build them somewhere else. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you can bring the college component into a community that's already helping you thrive, like a church, we like to do that where we can. And so I'm sorry for the distraction running around.
It's fine. It's real life. That's what we're about, right? Yeah. So if a church in California has been sponsoring classical conversations, and we of course meet during the daytime, if they wanted to have an evening extension of your program for the rest of their community, their adult community, they could do both, right?
Absolutely could. In fact, we've kind of looked at the network map kind of overlapping before, and we do have a lot of, many of our sites are also CC locations. Of course, there are many more CC locations, but absolutely they could do both.
Okay, I was thinking, Amanda, I want to give you a minute there to think of some questions and ask her about some of the philosophies that the children will be encountering through SEU. But first, Julie, do you mind just explaining to our audience what a parent practicum is? Megan referred to that, and not everybody may know.
Yeah, so that's kind of one day in the summer break when we're not in community, for us to be able to take a piece of the classical model tool. So whether it's our names or grammar, dialectic, rhetoric, the trivium, it could be a math theme. We come together as communities and practice. So practicum is practicing. So we come together and practice whatever our practicum team of academic advisors put for us that year. So it's an encouraging time. It's not typically a busy time because communities aren't meeting. And it's actually pretty refreshing because we all miss our friends and we like to see them over the summer. So that's
How
what we
much
do.
does it cost?
Oh, it's free, and Lee will never charge for parent practicum. I can tell you, she's been saying that since even though we begged. $5, Lee, would be so helpful. No.
I think it's the
Training.
best. It's the best time to bring a friend who's even like potentially remotely interested, because there's no way you attend a practicum and you don't get a sense of what CC is. You hear
Yes.
about the curriculum, but you also see the community being the community, and that's such an attractive thing. It's my favorite time to bring friends.
Well, it was funny. We were at a convention once and I was working a booth, and someone at a big, another classical school came over and he said, so you mean hundreds of parents voluntarily give up a day of their summer to go practice academics? And I said, yeah, they do. How do you do that? How do you get them there? So it's pretty inspiring for even other organizations.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at, upwards of 30,000 parents in the summer doing this. And that's the one-day practicum. There's other smaller events also in the summer, some orientations and local community events. The parents, intentional parents, they want help and they're willing to do the work it takes.
And not only are they willing to do the work it takes, they want adults to talk to, because their kids are fascinating, but sometimes we want that adult conversation, and practicum is where you go for that one too.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So, well, Dr. Griffin, I am curious about your partnership with churches and also the word mentor. If I wanted somebody to be a mentor, to introduce the mentor idea, what is it you look for, and how do you know you have a good one?
That's excellent. Well, when I think about mentors, a lot comes to mind, but like, there's no doubt it's a really weird time to work in higher education. But like, everything's changing and it's changing fast. We have like these big conglomerations of schools that are massive in size. We have acquisitions and alliances that are happening all around us. We've got places opening and closing. We've got all different kinds of program types, and that's not going to slow down. I mean, it's really wise to have a podcast like this one, because just navigating all the choices is a really interesting thing for students coming up. And it's, like I said, it's not going to slow down. So there's going to be more and more and more and more options. One thing I'm sure of is that as all of that shifts and changes, like learning modalities might change, some places have full semesters or 8-week sessions or intensive class, like with all of that, those are all kind of made up higher education structures. Like, we made them up. They can change. It's totally fine for them to change. The things that we didn't make up, that are sacred, that will not change, are things like learning always happening in relationship and always in the presence of a mentor who attends not just to what they're teaching you, but to the Holy Spirit and the Lord's direction, and you as a person, as an individual. No matter what happens, learning always will include those elements. So a student might take a great online class and learn some things, but I guarantee you that a student who's thriving also has somebody outside of that particular class who's mentoring them in their life. And so for us, we train our faculty that way. There's the content that we're wanting to teach, right? And that students want to learn. But then there's that relationship that makes the whole thing possible. And I'm just, with everything shifting, there's two things I know will always be worth investing in, and it's family and the church. I think learning will always be connected to those two things. So for us, a church extension site is actually just returning education where it always belongs, in the family and in the church. And so for us, operating extension sites and faculty who teach through them is the easiest thing in the world to do. I was just at one of our regional campuses, the SEU Ohio Ministry Network's commencement last weekend. And I was sitting with their faculty, and they're the kind of people who say things like, man, I just want to preach on Sunday and pour into students all week, and I'm living the dream. I mean, that's a faculty member if I ever saw one. They're people who just can't help but love on students and try to help them, to kind of just share, here's what I've learned along the way. Those are the kinds of people we've got at each of those sites, and of course on our main campus too. But what they're not is the kind of person who like stiffens up in a tweed coat with elbow patches on, and they care more about the identity of a faculty member than they do this relationship. It's a sacred relationship between the teacher and the student. So those are the kinds of folks we look for. Those are the kinds of things we try to train in and model for all the faculty to teach. And it's exactly the kind of thing that happens in the CC community, and which is partly why it just feels so natural to work together.
Something logistically that I want to make sure the listeners are clear about is they're used to the idea of lone school college where you're online. They're used to the idea of going to a massive facility with maybe 400 to 40,000 students, but your extensions are neither. So I want to make that clear that if you think it's a really good idea for your children to participate in a program that might have 2 people or 30 people or 80 people, that there's all sizes and kinds of like entrepreneurial opportunities for the church to administer educational models. So
Yeah.
do you just want to address that more?
Yeah, so when I think about kind of the landscape of higher ed generally, lots of things can be systematized. So we can develop really strong curriculum, the same way you have with the challenge and the foundations and essentials programs. You can develop really strong curriculum. And that can be, in a way, systematized. What we still want is it delivered through local connections and local relationships. So for SEU, we've got programs that we offer that we develop, and we want them to be as strong as they can be, so that a church that's running, a program doesn't have to develop it from scratch. They're going to use the curriculum that's provided, but then do it through relationship that's local. So yeah, we've got what's really interesting is a lot of the church extension sites that we work with, they all have something that they felt really called to anyway. So either that place is a place that's really interested in developing people for ministry leadership, or maybe they're a place that's really committed to being a place for mental health support in their community, or maybe they're a place that has like a really strong Christian business incubator. Each one of the sites has sort of a flair for one of those things. And so what we do is we have those programs in those locations. So they offer programs that really fit with their ministry distinctives anyway. I don't know if that helps. Is that what we were looking for?
Yeah, and also let's give you a minute to tell people, all right, so I'm interested, I hear there's all kinds of possibilities for education in all kinds of communities. How do I find out where they are and what they're offering?
Sure. That is the big question for the future of education, for sure. First of all, you need a mentor to help you navigate all of those things, but you need, tools like this podcast. For SEU in particular, I mean, you can come to seu.edu and we have links to all of our extension site locations. Here's the thing, our network is big and it is complicated. Like there's stuff everywhere. So the best thing you can do is get a hold of one person at SEU who will guide you through it. So you can call anybody and we'll get you where you need to go. But you could start with our site, and there's our website, and there's a lot of information there about where programs are offered.
So with a variety like you're offering with your extension campuses and your partnership with the church, it sounds like you could also have students who step in and out as family life gets flexible, or church dynamic, or they're entrepreneurs and their business needs to take more time rather than their formal education. How do you handle the stop and start that's probably characteristic of this model?
No, yeah, that's a great question. And I think for us, that's the next thing I'm excited to see. So we have this network, and I'm going to nerd out for a minute, but I love actor network theory. So I studied Greek hypnonemata, life writing, but I also studied actor network theory. So if you spend any time on networks, they're living things. They change all the time. There's gravity points that move and shift, and you cannot architect them. You have to respond to them. So that's the most exciting thing about a network. The next move will be helping people understand the potential for movement within a network. So right now, a student might go to the main campus and to an extension site and back again and online. What we need to do a better job of is explaining, but if you could get to this place, this site, the Belonging Co. in Tennessee, there's no better place to learn worship production than there. They have it all. If you are interested in apologetics, there's no better place to study apologetics than Bayside Bradenton. Like that location just they have it covered. If you want to set, then I could go down the list, but there's certain locations that become gravity points for certain communities of scholars and student types of learners. And getting the flow moving between all of those locations, I think is the next key for us, and just telling the story. And then making it possible for students to invest maybe a semester somewhere. So we've got this idea for a sort of a networked Christian arts conservatory. So it's really difficult for institutions to run sustainable music programs at every Christian school. They're small, they're costly. But you know what every community has? A Philharmonic orchestra and people who will mentor students. And maybe what students need is to be in community with that person and then come into a location, maybe a semester, 2 semesters at a time. I think the future of education is going to look more like that. And it'll be networks that know how to move students around. That's what we're working on, is making it a more movable, portable art. As of right now, yes, you can go back and forth from online to extension site to main campus. And we have lots of people doing that.
Would you say that, I mean, it sounds like you don't think that's the best model, but sometimes life needs adaptations. So that, that you wouldn't be against longevity and really cultivating mentors and, and classmates, but sometimes that's not possible.
Certainly not. Well, here's what I know for sure. The days of students choosing one college, coming in with 0 credits and staying for 4 years have been long gone. So that had its benefits. It also had its drawbacks. So I'm for students being able to make choices that make sense for them, for what they're called to, for their life circumstances. Long-term relationships are really important. Those are the transformational relationships with professors you have in college. But knowing that's not, that 4 years in one place is definitely not the norm. Just seems like, let's start from the expectation that students will either be here for a shorter time or will plan to move around between options during their 2 or 3 years of college.
Good. Amanda.
So, Dr. Griffin, Lakeland, Florida, wonderful place. I've driven through there, been there. So my question for you is, how do the students who are on campus in your residential model get connected to local churches?
That's good.
You're muted.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was texting my husband, please come tell the boys to chill out. Okay. You said in the residential model, how do they get connected to churches? Okay, so this is all of our students, no matter where they're learning, if it's at an extension site and online or on our Lakeland campus, we care a lot about experiential learning, not at the expense of real coursework, right? But as you're learning, always be applying it in community. So our students are kind of expected that throughout their degree, they're interning somewhere, they're doing practicum credit somewhere, and that can be on campus, that can be in local businesses, and we really like when it's at a local church. So our students, regardless of where they're studying, are often earning, we call it practicum credit or internship credit, by applying the skills that they're learning at a church, because most majors have a connection to churches, and students are expected to kind of have those local. We don't offer our chapels on Sundays because we expect students to be in a local church community on Sundays, that kind of thing.
So it sounds like you look at your residential campus as a way of also blessing the local church with resources and people who can help the local church flourish in the business side of doing church. I know that sounds weird to say there's a business side to doing church, but when there's physical facilities, there is. Yeah, so that's interesting. And it's expected that they'll be involved in it. How does that inform the classroom conversation and the mentor relationship? Because you may have mentor in your model and mentor in their church relationship, which may not always say exactly the same thing.
And it's good that they're not. I mean, because they come with different sets of strengths. So the way your internship mentor in any job is going to be a little bit different than a faculty member you have on campus. We bring different things to the table, and that's totally fine. So we don't expect it to always look the same. One thing that's really interesting is when we're hiring faculty at SEU, one, especially in ministry and theology disciplines, one thing I ask them, and usually it's a surprise to them. Maybe now it'll be out and there won't be a surprise, but like, I always ask them, hey, can you talk to me about, what's the relationship between the academy and the church? Which is a really big question. But I'm listening for really specific things. If I hear from somebody that the academy's relationship is to sort of put the church in its place and in line, then I know I'm working with somebody who elevates the academy above the church. Which would be a normal thing for the academy to kind of think of itself doing. If I hear somebody who starts talking to me about, listen, our job is to equip people for serving people and leading others, then I know I've got somebody who's ready to be in a position to serve the church. And as an institution, we care about serving the church. So I listen for that. And it's also interesting because some people would anticipate that we have all of the academy at our Lakeland campus, and our job is to kind of put that out into the network. It actually is a mutual relationship. There's some things the church know better because they're serving in real time and not sort of outside of practice than we do in the academy. So it's really a two-way street. So our curriculum supports the church informs our curriculum so that we're always making it better. And that's sort of a mutual relationship that's always ongoing.
Interesting. So
Julie, I was saying, Julie, if you have any questions, feel free to ask too. Go ahead, Amanda.
So I know somebody who's been working on sort of a milestone. They have been a parent. They've dedicated their lives to educating their kids, and they have an undergrad degree. And I know that they've been working on the SEU master's degree. So you not only have this offering for our just out of high school people, but even our parents who are just out of high school the second time people. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I'd love to. So I'll go back to the time at Parent Practicum when I'm realizing this isn't a normal like mom's group. This is like the smartest women, the group of the smartest women I've ever met, and dads too. And then as we started working on CC Plus, I was reading Cindy Rollins' book, which is a homeschool memoir. And in the last chapter, she sort of asked the question, once you're done homeschooling your kids, what next? What to do with all of this? Well, I'm at SEU running 200 extension sites, hiring 500 adjuncts a year. And I'm like, I know what to do with those moms. Like if we could just capture what they already know and get them set up in a way that they could become the ones that we, let's bring all of that knowledge and understanding into this educational system where I can't teach somebody what a CC mom knows just by virtue of teaching, even if it's just your own kids, but also a group of 10 or 12, the attending to a person individually, but really caring about this high level curriculum. Like I can't manufacture that. So is there a way that we could bring those parents in to a system if they wanted to share what they learned with college students who didn't have the benefit of a CC education or a homeschool experience? So that sounded like a crazy, wild idea a couple of years ago, but wouldn't you know, some people have graduated from the program and it's actually working. I'm so excited. But the idea is really the same as CC Plus. Again, credit should follow where learning is already happening. And learning has already been happening for every CC parent all along the way. It's not a joke when Lee writes, it's redeeming your own education, or it's a whole family education. Like we see the evidence of that. So the CC Masters is simply, to me, the only natural response to that already taking place. And I hear from people in the program, they really enjoy the conversation because of course they're maybe leading challenge strands and they're having all these rich conversations with their teenagers, right? It's a little different coming in and having that same conversation around that same text with, fellow experts who've been doing it all along. So for me, I think about the CCMA that way. We've got 3 tracks that are running now and more in development. Incredibly rich discussion on those courses. And I know it's a lot of fun for everyone.
Can you describe the price point between the CC Plus courses and the masters? Like approximately how much is it, either a credit or course? You can average just so people know.
It's about 500 a course on the average for both. And that makes it incredibly affordable. I'll verify the MA pricing, but we've tried to make it as affordable as possible.
So I guess I should put a plug in for our own program. If you want to know about CC Plus, you actually can go to classicalconversations.com and do a search on CC PLUS. Sometimes CC and the plus sign will work too. And you can get the details on how our challenge 2, 3, and 4 students, by doing the work they're already doing, hold themselves accountable now, not just to their Classical Conversations tutor and to, of course, their parents, but now there's somebody who's really invested in the academic subject that's paying attention to and working in partnership. Nobody's usurping the parents or the tutor. And the other way around too, the tutors and the parents are trying to be respectful of the online professor from SEU. So I think it's been a really good partnership.
Yeah. So to verify, CC Plus courses are 500 a course. The masters are $399 a credit hour. So that's 1,200 a course. I will say it's a 30 credit master's degree, which is as brief a master's degree can be. So there are no required classes that aren't absolutely necessary to issue a master's degree. They keep it short and help control costs that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a 10 course process.
Yep, that's right.
Somebody asked me this past week at our convention how to get started with that. They already had their bachelor's, which of course is important in order to move into the master's. And I said, look, take 1 or 2 of the core. There's a core 4. Take 1 or 2 of those during the entire elementary age of your children. And then once one of the ones, the older or the next hits challenge A, challenge B, start taking 1 or 2 a semester yourself, and you'll have your master's easily by the time they graduate.
That's really good guidance for them. And I would say, you know, even if you are doing one of the core ones when your kids are still little, maybe they're not all the way, you know, up in challenge or anything. Everything that you're reading is something they will be reading. So there's the resting in that. You might be reading something ahead of where your kids are, but they'll be there eventually, and it'll be helpful at the time they get there that you've already done it. So I agree.
Yeah, so just to really clarify that for the listeners, if your child's going to be reading Mark Twain, which they will in challenge 1, guess what you're going to read? You know, Mark Twain. The books are the same, and so the order is. I mean, it's helpful when everyone in the family is reading it for the bedtime story at night. But if they're not, it's still going to be valuable when you get to that point with them.
Absolutely.
I have a question. So I've been really passionate when I was on the sales side of things, just really connecting with the churches and, you know, sharing with them. I like what you said, kind of bringing education back where it should be in the churches. And a lot of the small churches don't have the resources or means to start a school, but they can host a CC community. Is there somewhere where we could send a CC community facility who might be interested in being an adjunct? What you were talking about for SEU, is there somewhere where they could go and look and maybe see about that?
Absolutely. So if they go to the SEU website, su.edu, there's an HR page, and we have adjunct openings open all the time. And if they'll just note when they submit their interest in application that they're interested in working with a site at whatever. Usually people will work, you know, physically in a location that is local to them, but also maybe teach a few classes online. And so we have a lot of people who do that. So if they just go to the HR page, we've got openings for admins.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's why I wanted to do this and that's beneficial is like, so let's say I'm at Biola or one of the colleges near Amanda in California, and I love being a professor there. And like, you wouldn't think, oh, but you know, maybe there's some great dean or program at SEU and or some other university. And they may not even think, oh, there's extensions I can go to now. And so maybe they can teach one more art or literature course or whatever they're like to do at one of these extensions. The same with the students. They may be attending Biola. We're going to promote Biola because we know Amanda, how much she loves that school. And they may have an opportunity to take a summer course at one of the extensions. So people just really, they still think, like I said, it's online, or it's at the 4-year place, you know, singular place. And it's all over now. But Amanda, you seem to.
Well, one of the things that's really interesting about things being all over is this kind of works a bit like people in the ag part of some of the schools, like Michigan State or some of those, where there are extensions in all the towns for Michigan State's ag school. And so this is not agricultural. It is actually the churches reaching from what you're building, reaching out and nurturing the life of the church with an academic style of discussion, with courses that are sheltered and I guess curated by Southeastern University. So it isn't just your main campus. It is actually spread and diversified out. But some people might find a similarity to if they came through an ag school model of understanding.
I love that analogy, because you're exactly right. I mean, in ag school, growing is always going to be local and it has to happen in every community. So you've got these sort of programs that teach you what you need to know, but it's got to be applied all over the place. Same thing. We're doing the exact same thing with every kind of program and every kind of vocation.
So, Megan, what can we do to help? So I can think of somebody I know that's, fairly influential, has a bit of money, super frustrated at the lack of options in Christian colleges. And I keep telling them, there's not a lack of options. You just don't know what they are. How can we help people know, besides our podcast, which is the whole point of that, is let them know there's these options, but beyond college even. But what would be helpful to you guys?
Well, honestly, I mean, this is going to sound like such a strange answer, but that person has got to talk to their friends that serve on other boards of other universities, because at the board level, people need to get a lot more comfortable with cooperation, collaboration, and not thinking that everything has to be built individually by every school, because that's just simply not sustainable. Christian universities have to work better together, and boards need to be open to that. So what I try to do to contribute is to give people models to look to for where that's working. So we've got a lot of collaborations going on with other schools. That works best when you remember that it's a kingdom focus, not just a my institution focus. So anyway, anything a person like that could do to be influential at the board level, I think would be a huge benefit, because that's where, like, we have to do a lot of education. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of ways that we could all be working more seamlessly together, but we need people to understand what those models are and show them examples of those models in motion.
Can you name for us maybe some of the more famous, the more recognized names of schools you are partnering with?
Yeah, so we've got new things cooking up with Life Pacific University in California. We've got partnerships happening now with, we're working on one with Alliance in New York. That's a new one that we're beginning to work on. There are consortial relationships across schools that are sort of housed within units like the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities for course sharing consortia. SU is one of the first ones to join all of those things. And now I'm seeing a lot more people jump in, which is beautiful to see. We have a lot of, this is an interesting thing. So a lot of the accreditors for like medical schools, law schools, counseling programs will not allow Christian universities to admit only Christian students. So the way around that is to create consortial arrangements where graduates of places like SU get advanced standing or automatic admission into those programs. It's the only way any of those programs can kind of select Christian students into their programs to make sure that they're maintaining missional identity, because they can't require it at admission. What they can do is create these admission pathways. So we have tons of those that we work on constantly. We work a lot with Indiana Wesleyan, which is one of my favorites. We're doing some work with Laterno University. Abilene Christian is a great school. So there's all kinds.
That's good.
And
could you share with
models
us?
as well.
So this is different. This isn't a school you're working with, but you were telling me a story about a nursing school that, lo and behold, is actually in the hospital. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so interesting story. Part of the work is always going to be figuring out, I don't think about it as like red tape or bureaucracy. It's more like, okay, what's the maze I'm going to win today? So what are the constraints? How do I get to where we need to go? So here's one of those stories. So we have an extension campus in Puyallup, Washington. And this church location also has a K-12 school that they run. And so they have classroom space and lab space, plenty of room, right? They've got everything you need for science labs and everything else. In addition, they're like a quarter of a mile from a big hospital. They had a massive nursing shortage. And this is pre-COVID in the state of Washington. And so I've got the pastor there who's saying, we've got lab space, we've got a hospital where they want our students to work. Let's start a nursing program. And I'm thinking, let's do it. But what we ran into was some of these constraints where the hospital wanted the students. We had the facilities and the program, but the state was regulating where students could do their clinical hours. And so it took a long time to work through that. But why wouldn't you? You've got everything you need. You don't have to take people out of that town to some institution far away if you've got all the partners you need to meet the need right in that location. So that's easier in some states than others. And it's easier in some professions than others. But that's the story of the nursing example and what we've been working on there.
Okay, well, Amanda, do you have anything else for Dr. Griffin?
Well, this is the 18-year-old self question. So remember back when you were 18 and making this decision and all the things you were weighing, what's the best piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Trust the Lord and go where he's leading you, even though it may only be one step at a time. So, I mean, my story for figuring out college started actually when I was only 12 years old, because like a lot of people, I was in a town that said you had to choose a magnet program for high school. And if you're going to choose a magnet program for high school that's tied to a profession, you have to choose the right middle school so you could get into the right magnet school. So I remember being 7th grade, 12-year-old thinking, I have to decide today what I want to do with the rest of my life. And the pressure I felt, I ended up choosing a medical magnet for high school, and all of my coursework was about medicine, and I wanted to be a surgeon. My senior year of high school, I started my rotations at the hospital and fainted on day one because I absolutely do not like the blood and guts in real life. I could do it. We didn't have laparoscopic surgery back then. So I was like, well, that was all a waste of time. On the one hand, I'm really grateful for that experience. I'm glad I didn't go to college for that and then find out later it wasn't the thing. At the same time, the pressure that I felt was completely unnecessary. I ended up choosing an English major at a school that I just really liked the people in the location, because English major left so many things open, and I just followed what I felt the Lord was leading me to do, you know, the little bit that I knew at a time. And so what I would say to a student who's 18 is that's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out in the beginning. You don't have to have an end goal in mind. Really the end goal for all of us is trusting where the Lord will lead you. And, you know, I wish he would give us all the steps early on, but it just doesn't seem to be the way he leads us. So I would tell students, just relax, talk to your parents, talk to other people about what some of the options are, and expect surprises. Whatever it is you do have in mind right now at 18 may not be exactly where things lead, and that's okay. And it may not make sense at any point until you're, 42 and looking back and thinking, okay, I get what story was being knit together this whole time. That's just the journey. What I will say is hang on to your mentors. I bet for CC students, it's a couple of the directors they've had along the way. I bet it's a couple of early career professionals. Hang on to those people and stay in touch with them, because they're going to have advice for you that will be far beyond the season that you've been in with them. I love my mentors, and they go way back, and I'm really glad that they're a part of my life. So I would consider all of that as an 18-year-old, and have fun. I'm speaking to the fellow overachievers out there. Have a little fun too, not too much, but enjoy it.
Well, thank you, Megan, for being with us. And we look
Absolutely.
forward to having as many people as possible watch this and know college is not what they think it is anymore. And thanks for all the options you are thinking of.
Mhm.
And hey, thank you guys. Thank you for sending the best students college has ever seen. The ones that come out of the CC programs. We love those. We love your students. So thank you.
All right. Bye, team.
Great.
Bye.
See ya.
Have a great day.
Bye.